same. Okay. Can you see my presentation now?
Not yet.
Let's wait a second.
Yep, take your time.
Okay, now I think you can see. Huh?
Yep.
Okay, good. Whenever you don't understand, you stop me. And I do apologize for my English. It's not really perfect, but I think we can understand each other. So in this presentation, I'm going to focus mainly on the land conflict or land competition in East Congo, in North Kivu province, which is a bit, I can say, the epicenter of the Congolese war, a war that is ravaging the country since, or the east part of the country since more than 30 years now. It's a very complicated issue, and I hope I will be able to explain you some relevant aspect of this problem. First of all, I just want to thank, because I'm part of a research group with Christopher Vogel of the University of Ghent, an Italian guy, Giovanni Selvaggio, and we had also 5 Congolese scholars who did field research just in December and January this year on the land conflict and on gold traffic in North Kivu, in the territory of Lubero. So I'm going to use some of the, I don't want to quote the Congolese scholars because they prefer to remain anonymous, and we are writing a report about this research. So part of I'm going to use in this presentation some of the data we collected, or they collected actually, because there was a problem of COVID. So the Congolese scholars did a good job in the field, a good field research on the land conflict and the gold traffic in North Kivu. So just for the ones who are not familiar with the geography of Congo, okay, we are here. This is the Democratic Republic of Congo, of course, ex-Zaire, DRC from '96, before it was Zaire. And the region we are going to focus on is this region here, near Uganda. The purple one here is Uganda, and the small one here is Rwanda, and the yellow one a bit in the south is Burundi. So it's this border region of North Kivu. So I will show you a more detailed map. You can see this small country here is Rwanda, of course. Kigali is here. Uganda is here. Kampala is here. Bujumbura and Burundi is here. So my presentation will focus on this province, North Kivu. The capital of North Kivu is Goma, which is a border town near to Rwanda. And this is another more detailed map. As you can see, the province of North Kivu is divided in different territoires. They call them territoires. We have the territoire of Beni here in what is called the Grand North, in the north, which now maybe you heard about this region of Beni, because in this region there is a militia, the Allied Defense Force, which has committed recently, I mean, the last 5-6 years, many massacres. And a couple of weeks ago, the Ugandan army did intervene in Congo. Since there were some terrorist attack in Uganda in the last couple of months, that I mean, they accused the IDF to be responsible for these attacks. Actually, IDF is a militia which comes from Uganda and now is active in this region in Congo. Then we have the territoire of Lubero in the central province. It's a big territoire here. Here we have the famous park, the Virunga Park. I'm saying famous park because in this region here, because I think it's the oldest park in Africa, the Virunga Park, when it's also famous for the gorilla. And this is the region of the capital, Goma, you see, is on the border with Rwanda. And the other territory, the territory of Goma, Masisi, Ruchuru, and Walikale. So this is the entire region we are going to focus a bit. The war in Congo, I would like to define it a multidimensional conflict. No, there are many levels of conflict in this war that started, let's say, officially in '96 with the AFDL rebellion of Laurent Désiré Kabila, an armed movement supported by Rwanda and Uganda, and that was in '97 the end of the Mobutu regime, and then again another rebellion in '98 with the Rassemblement Congolais pour la Démocratie and so on. But actually, in the region of North Kivu, there was a conflict before '96. The conflict actually began at the beginning of the '90s. So before the genocide in Rwanda, that was somehow the event that destabilized the entire region. The land problem was at the core, and still is at the core of the conflict in the North Kivu. No? It's one dimension of this conflict. So when I say multidimensional conflict, if we want to divide a bit, and from an analytical point of view, because of course all these levels are interconnected and they foster each other. So we have, of course, the influence of the neighboring countries, Rwanda, Uganda, and Burundi. I just said that Uganda sent the army now in Congo, of course, with the agreement of the Congolese government. But anyway, Rwanda is maybe the key actor in Congo, in East Congo. Then we have, of course, a war economy, which is part of a global economy, based, of course, on the traffic of mainly of mineral resources. And when we speak about North Kivu, we speak about gold, and we just did a research about gold traffic between Congo, Beni Butembo region, and Kampala, Uganda. So there are a lot of informal networks. So there is a war economy. There is a conflict on citizenship, let's say, between groups or ethnic groups that consider themselves autochthonous, the real Congolese, and other groups that are considered not really Congolese, the Banyarwanda or the Rwandophone speaking. There is, of course, a problem of state weakness in this part of in the east part of Congo. There is a problem of the national army, because as we will see in the next map, in North Kivu, actually in East Congo, and when I say East Congo, I refer to the province of Ituri, North Kivu and South Kivu. In a survey made last year by a group of researchers, I will show you the barometer of, on the militia. They counted like 122 militia active nowadays in Congo, plus the national army. So it is a landscape completely fragmented. No, there was proliferation of militias and armed actors. So the national army is also a problem, because the national army, the new national army, the FARDC, the Forces Armées de la République démocratique du Congo, was created recently through the integration of different armed groups. And the main problem, not only the main problem, is that within the national army, there are parallel chains of commands. and so sometimes some commanders become rebel, and of course there is no one that really can control completely the national army. No? It's a big problem, as maybe I will focus again. And another problem, there's widespread social paranoia. I think that we don't give enough importance sometimes to what I call social paranoia, and let me define it a bit better, because it's the perception to be victim of the violence of someone else. And sometimes this perception can bring you to action. And of course, we are in a kind of vortex of violence that every group somehow has its own reason to consider itself like the victim of the violence of another groups. So this is a kind of vortex. And finally, another dimension, and this is just this list is not complete. It is the land conflict, the land competition, which is, of course, a structural problem that keeps on fostering violence in this region. And this is the topic I will try to address today. So let me just give you some show you some photos, some picture of this region. This is the Masisi. This photo I took it just from internet, sorry, from Wikipedia maybe, but this is the Masisi, which is one of the territory of the North Kivu, as you can see, is completely cultivated, even in the slopes, etc., etc. Is a fertile area, and the Masisi Walikale, at least historically, is the epicenter of the land conflict in, as I will show you later, in the Kivu. Let me show you some other photo. This is this is a typical landscape of North Kivu. Here we are in the region of Lubero. So in the territory of Lubero. Here we are in a village called Masereka, which is also in the territory of Lubero. And this village, particularly this village, as other village, was ravaged by an important land conflict that so I mean some villages were burnt and so on, etc. So just to give you an idea of the landscape, we are like here, for example, in Masereka, I think the altitude is like 2,000 meters, and they cultivate different product according to the altitude, but also I will come back on this. So the land conflict, I would like to call the land conflict as a kind of structural conflict. I don't know if we can say that the land conflict is part of is a longue durée. I mean, is a conflict which starts a long time ago and still going on. But anyway, of course, it is not a new conflict, the land conflict or the land competition. We can say that the epicenter of the land conflict is this region here, near Rwanda, the Masisi, and then the Ruchu, and then of course nowadays even the other region. But everything started a bit in this region. For which are the historical region of this conflict? First of all, in this region, we have some Rwandophone communities, I mean, people Hutu or Tutsi living in this region since, I could not say since always, but since pre-colonial times, small communities, etc. And nowadays, these people are called Banyarwanda. Banyarwanda means people who comes from Rwanda, and it's quite a wide category. And I mean, within this category, we have some communities of Hutu and Tutsi who have been living in this region since a long time. But during colonial time, what happened? The Belgium, they tried to favorish the migration from Rwanda to Congo. And this started during the 30s, I mean, before the Second World War and after. Why? Because basically for two reasons. Because Rwanda was under demographic pressure at the time already. And second, because the Belgians needed the manpower for the plantation in Congo, and manpower also for the mining sector in Congo. So they favored the migration. And in 1937, they established this institution that is called the MIB, la Migration de Banyarwanda, la Mission de Migration de Banyarwanda, sorry, which was no, a way to control the migration of the population towards this region. And we do calculate that from the 30s going on, more than 300,000 people migrated from mostly to migrated in the Masisi region and then in the Rutshuru. And to make it a bit simple, what happened? Of course, first of all, in pre-colonial time, to make it simple, what was how do the land was distributed? Of course, they didn't have private property, but the land was under the control of the Bami. The Bami is the plural of Mwami. It means Mwami means chief. Okay, and the chief through the different through different notables, etc., used to distribute the land, and people have to pay a rent for the land. That could be a goat or whatever. So but in colonial time, of course, the Belgian did introduce the land register, and so some land were, let's say, privatized for plantation, etc. So we start to have a double system. On the one hand, some land was still managed, let's say, through the traditional way, through the Bami, and some other lands were privatized with a land title and the land office and land register. That was the situation. But so when the migrants from Rwanda started to come in this region, sometimes what do they have to do? They have to get some land and respect, for example, the power of the local Bami, and to pay to the local Bami rent, etc. Or in some other case, the Belgian administration could give them a plot of land to cultivate, etc. But of course, from the migrant point of view, if I come to Congo and I have my small plot of land, and of course I have my my land title, and this is my private land, of course there is already a conflict, at least from the point of view of the perception of the land, because from my point of view, migrant, I'm there with a land title. I mean, that land is not an ancestral, an ancestral meaning from my point of view, and I can sell it or etc. That's my land. But let's say from the traditional point of view, you can't sell the land. That is the land of your ancestor, and you have to pay if you want to dig or you want to cultivate that land. You have to pay a rent to the local Mwami. So the problem is that in this region, quickly already in the 60s, in Masisi and later on in Walikale, the Banyarwanda population became the majority in this region. So even if at the beginning there were not so many conflicts between the Banyarwanda and let's say the local Bami, the local chief, etc., but some friction started because, for example, the Belgian during I think during the 50s, I don't remember any well. For example, they established a new chieftain for the Banyarwanda. At the time, the Mwami was a Tutsi, and this new chiefdom, even if they did establish it at the beginning with the agreement of the local Bami, with the agreement of the Unde, in this region the major population were Unde. They gave, they created this new chiefdom for the Banyarwanda, but soon some problems emerged, and at the end of the day, this new chiefdom was abolished, just because let's say the local chiefs, the local Bami did not want to. I mean, they were in charge of managing the land, and so that was not possible for them to accept another Mwami or a Munyarwanda Mwami. So already we had some problem, but and during the colonial time, and of course this kind of problem started to, I mean, a new opposition emerged in this situation between autochthonous and migrants. So even the obsession for autochthony, because until now, at the core of the competition is who is the real owner of the land, and the real owner of the land, of course, is the one who are autochthonous, and how can you define autochthonous, and so on and so on. And of course, during the 60s and later on in the 70s until now, the land issues involved also the problem of citizenship. Who is Congolese, who is not Congolese, which is another level of conflict, which is somehow related to the land competition. Okay, I hope it is clear. If you have some question, please you just stop me. So what happened? Of course, during the colonial time, as I tried to show you already, something changed. The perception of land changed. The traditional system of land distribution was, I mean, they introduced a double system. One was traditional, the other one was modern system or private system, etc., etc. So it was already, things started to change, but things went much more wrong during Mobutu regime. Okay, Congo became independent in 1960 with Lumumba. Then Lumumba was assassinated just a couple of months after the independence. Then officially after 5 years, Mobutu took power, even if Mobutu was already the big man before 1965. Sorry, and during the Mobutu regime, a new law was approved about the land. This law is quite famous. It's called the Bakajika law. That at first draft was in 66, and then it was confirmed in 73. And what did the law? The law provided for the nationalization of Congolese soil and some soil. And sorry, I can see. How can I remove? Okay, sorry. Yeah, for the nationalization of Congolese soil and subsoil. And on the other hand, so all the land become property of the Congolese state. But on the other hand, it left the possibility of managing the land according to the customary use. So the Bami could still manage the land, but this customary use had to be regulated by a presidential decree that was never promulgated. So the result of the Bakajika law was a double system, and of course a lot of chaos on the rights, on le droit foncier, on the rights related to the land. So what was actually the main problem? During Mobutu time, the land, to make it simple, was nationalized. No? But at the same time, the land was, and after being nationalized, the land was redistributed according to a clientelistic system, to a patronage system. No? So, to make it simple, Mobutu took all the land and then redistribute it to his clients, can be some local big men, generals, some big businessmen, etc. All these big men that were part of the patronage system of the Mobutu regime. So overall, in the east part of Congo, overall in the Kivu, the consequence of the law was there were many consequences. But first of all, one of the consequences was the creation of an elite foncier, or elite of big men with that were able to accumulate a lot of land. So, as an elite of agricultural capitalists that could accumulate a lot of land. The other effect, of course, was dispossession. Local community sometimes were evicted from the land. Another consequence, of course, was the reinforcement of ethnic identities. And again, of course, many conflicts start in the east of Congo, many conflicts related to the land. So, somehow, in the post-colonial times, overall during the 70s, now what happened is that the local chiefs they lost somehow their traditional power. Or sometimes they were co-opted by the local government, etc., etc. And new actors emerged in the political and economic scene. Overall, these big men related to the Mobutu regime and clients of the Mobutu regime. And actually, in Congo, in the region we are dealing with, overall in Masisi, during the 70s, what happened that some big businessmen belonging to the Banyarwanda community were able to accumulate a lot of land. A lot of land. Of course, this means dispossession. This means that the peasants they found themselves with small plot of land, and sometimes there is not enough the production is not enough, and this means sometimes malnutrition, and of course this means also conflicts between the different communities. Just to give you an example, a concrete example, one of these big men, maybe the most famous one during the 70s, was Bisengimana, and Bisengimana was a member, was a Munyarwanda, so a member of the Banyarwanda community of the Masisi, who actually was, I think, he was one of the first, I mean, maybe it was the first electrical engineer in Congo, and he was a big businessman, dealing with electric, but and he was close to Mobutu. He was part of Mobutu cabinet, of the Mobutu regime, of the Mouvement Populaire pour la Révolution, which was the Mobutu party. So he was very close to Mobutu, and Bisengimana and other businessmen in the region was able to, let's say, to grab or to accumulate a lot of land in this region, in Massis, etc. Bisengimana and the small elite close to him. And of course, so we have a double pose. On the one hand, we have a lot of inequality in the access to land, and on the other hand, we have also a demographic pressure because the population was increasing. And this is yeah, actually what happened during the period of Mobutu. No? I said legislative chaos and patronage system. No, with two. I mean, that's the way to summarize the question during Mobutu regime. As I told you before, of course, the problem of land is also related somehow to the problem of citizenship. So under the pressure, some big men like Habyarimana, who were members of the Banyarwanda community, but at the same time were members also of the Mobutu, were also Mobutu clients, let's say. In 1972, the citizenship law was changed, and the new law granted the full Congolese citizenship to all Kinyarwanda speakers who had already resided in the Congo before the 50s. So let's say that most of the people who, most of the Banyarwanda, through this law could become Congolese. But the problem is that this law was revoked in 1981. And so, since the law was revoked, all the Banyarwanda population found itself in a dangerous position. So they changed the law, and they fix a new, let's say, a new year, no, for the citizenship. I mean, only the family who could prove to be there in Congo before 1885, no, could become Congolese. So, of course, the new legislation casting the dub in the legal rights, including, of course, land tenure. And this new legislation affected like 500,000 of Banyarwanda in the Kivu. Then at the beginning of the 90s, so we have before the war. I would like to remove this, but I don't know what to do. Anyway, in Kinshasa, they established the Conférence Nationale Souveraine, no, that was an assembly that aimed at leading the country towards democratic transition. And of course, if you want to decide, to have an election, you have to decide who is Congolese, not Congolese. And the decision to exclude the Banyarwanda representatives from the Conférence Nationale Souveraine exacerbated the tension in the North Kivu. So already at the beginning of the 91, 92, 93, we assist, so before the genocide in Rwanda, before 94, we assist in the North Kivu we assisted at the proliferation of militia, because the different groups start to organize themselves in militia, and so young people are recruited in the ethnic militia and so on. Let's say, just to make a bit clear, the conflict escalation in Kivu. So we have a massive dispossession, and this is one of the consequences of the Bakajika law, a creation of a landowner elite, an erosion of customary arrangement, so an erosion of the power of the Bami, etc., etc. The pauperization also of the customary elite, And on the top of that, we have the absence of a clear legislation on land, and also a manipulation of citizenship. And all these factors contributed to create an explosive situation. And actually, the violence started in 1993 when some militiamen belonging to the Hunde group. The Hunde are were actually the majority group in the Masisi territory. They committed a massacre. They killed some young Banyarwanda, and then there was an escalation. And already in Busia, since that war is also called the Maghrebi War, maybe 10,000 people were killed, and hundreds of thousands of people had to leave the region, and they become refugee in Uganda, or they become IDP, and so on. The situation in Kivu was already very hot before the genocide of Rwanda. But what happened? It happened that in April 1994, we have the genocide in Rwanda. Around, as we know, 800,000 people, mainly Tutsi, were killed in 100 days. And when the Rwanda Patriotic Front, the rebel movement led by Paul Kagame, conquered, let's say, Rwanda, 1.2 million refugees left Rwanda, and because they were scared to be killed by the Rwanda Patriotic Front, they fled Rwanda and they arrived in Kivu. But as I tried to explain you, they arrived in a region that was already ravaged by a conflict between overland and between Banyarwandan and local people. So then after that, we have the war, the AFDL war in Congo, that started again in North Kivu. They started in Goma, they started in Bukavu, in South Kivu also. So the AFDL, Alliance des Forces Démocratiques pour la Libération du Congo, was a movement, and the leader of the movement was Laurent Désiré Kabila, and the movement was supported mainly by Rwanda and by Uganda. And the AFDL, mainly at that time, was composed by RPF, Rwanda Patriotic Front soldiers. I mean, there were a big number in the AFDL. And they conquered the country. This is just the last attempt of immigration between Kabila and Mobutu, led by, of course, at that time by Mandela. And this is, but at the end of the day, Kabila became president, starting the war from the Kivu. Then again, in 1998, so a new rebellion again supported in East Congo, and again the new rebellion started in Goma and Bukavu. A new rebellion started in the east, supported by Rwanda and by Museveni, by President Museveni again, because somehow, to make it simple, Kabila had betrayed them. Kabila was killed in 2001, and his son Joseph Kabila took power. And in the last election, Kabila was not re-elected, could not be re-elected, and the new president is Tshisekedi. But what is the situation? No, so we can say, okay, now there is no, let's say we have the election, we have many elections, etc. But still, Congo, the east part of Congo, the central government is not able to control the east part of Congo. And I want to show you the map of the militia of the region we are talking about. Let me just go back to yeah, okay. Okay. Can you see the map? I hope you can see. So this is a map of the militia of East Congo, and this map was made by the Baromètre Sécuritaire de Kivu. Just to give you an idea, it was made on 2020. So this is the region of Ituri, where we have like something, or the number referred to a specific militia. And here we have like 10 militia, and maybe nowadays more. And this is the region where we are talking about, the region of Goma, Bukavu, etc., where nowadays we have something like more than 45 militia. Of course, the number can change because we are speaking about very fluid groups. Sometimes they are allied, sometimes they split, and so on. But so, as you can see, the region we are talking about is completely no, there are let's say 50 or more militia. So there is a, let's say, proliferation of armed actors in this region. Nowadays, to give you, this is the number 12 is the ADF, for example, which is unfortunately one of the most famous militia, because it's the one that the ADF committed a lot of massacre, etc. Then we have a multitude of Mai militia that they consider themselves like popular militia of self-defense against the invasion of Rwandese and blah blah. Whenever you look where most of the militia, they control area reaching gold. For example, this area of Lubero, in this river is, there is mining going on, artisanal mining going on. Of course, this militia, they most of the time they control this, or they try to control the traffic of gold, and so on. And when you go to the region of Masisi, etc., you can see how the territory is totally fragmented and under the control of different groups. And just a couple of when is it? Yeah, just a couple of days ago, we had big fights in this region between the National Army, the Congolese National Army, and the movement N23, which was a movement quite famous a couple of years ago, and now was a bit dormant. And now what I know, that there was some fights between the National Army and some UN contingent and this movement. So this is the region of Kivu. And here we have the region of South Kivu, where again we have a lot, tens of militia. So at that time, when this group made the survey in the region, they counted 122 militia active in the region. So what can I say? I would like to summarize this through, let's say, let me give it a title, and the title is The Stability of Instability. Because more or less, the number of militia has not changed so much in the last 10 years. So we are really we are stuck, let's say, in a situation of stability of instability, with a multitude of armed actors and so on, controlling this region, controlling mineral resources, not only mineral resources, also some other, they have also some other deals and so on. So this is the situation, just to give you an idea. It's quite complicated, as you can see. And we are just focusing on one level, which is the land conflict, that maybe which is a bit in the long durée. Is a conflict which comes from far. Now, let's go back to the land conflict, because it's quite complicated. So what happened? So I said legislative chaos, elite accumulation, and so on. And I want to give you some examples, some concrete example of land conflict in the region. For example, in the Ituri, I'm referring, the Ituri is the province a bit north, in the north, Bunia, etc. When I was there in 2003, there was a big fight between two communities, Ema and Lendu, until now. I think there is the conflict is not over yet. But just to make it simple, what happened at that time? It happened that some businessmen, in that case there were some Ema businessmen, they obtained some land titles through corruption. You go to the, I think they went to Kinshasa, to the land office, so you can just bribe the land office at the provincial level. And they got some land titles, and they evicted some land communities. Or sometimes what happened even in Ituri or in other region, some big men, so the ones who are able or to have money to bribe the officer in the land office, etc. No, they can buy actually a land title, then they can keep calm for a couple of years, because after 2 years, if nobody appeal, you cannot appeal anymore, and then they can evict the people. They say, okay, this is my land, this is the title, and you have to leave. And peasants, what can they do? Nothing. Oh, it's very difficult. They can resort to the local court, but you need money, and there is corruption, and so on. So this is just an example. The fact that some businessmen, some big men, can buy land title and then can evict the local communities, and then for this local community is very difficult, or to revindicate their rights on the land. Or maybe you can bribe even a local chief, and say, okay, I bribe you, you can give me the land, and then you evict the people living in the land. No, this was quite common even in the Masisi. Again, in the Masisi, for example, another type of land conflict, when the Banyarwanda community disclaim, no, they don't recognize anymore the wounded Bami. I mean, the Bami of the, let's say, what the wounded that they consider themselves like the autochthonous group. So in this case, we are, for example, in the Masisi, Banyarwanda, the majority of the population now. They say, why should we pay a tribute to the why we should depend on the Undepami when we have the majority? And consequently, the autochthonous group tried to deny the political rights to the Banyarwanda, say, okay, but you are not, according to the law, you are not really Congolese, etc., etc., you are a foreigner, and so on. So these problems are interconnected. We have other problems. For example, some military commanders are able to grab the land, and then they can redistribute it to their clients, or so on. We have problem of IDP. You have to understand that these regions is, I show you now, we have different conflict going on and still now going on. We have hundreds of thousands of IDP. So sometimes people they run away from a certain region, and they arrive in another region. They want to have land. Or in some other occasion, maybe you have to leave. You have to leave your village. You have to flee because there is insecurity. Maybe what do? You just leave your land like that, and then you come back after a couple of years, and your land was occupied by someone else who started to cultivate it, and so on. And so again, there is a conflict from this point of view. Or maybe if you are if there is a conflict, what can you do? You sell your land at a low price because you have to flee, and when you come back after a couple of years, you try to renegotiate a bit the agreement. So,
Okay.
of course,
We're
see?
going slightly over time. Would it be possible to wrap it up in a few minutes?
Yeah, sorry. I thought, yeah. Yeah, this is the land. So, to make it, I will come to my conclusion. So, the major problem, there are a lot of problems, but when we refer to the land issue, one of the major problems is that local institutions are generally not able to settle the land conflicts. And when I say local institutions, like I said, the provincial court, the BAMI, the chiefs, the churches, the NGO, etc., etc. So it is very typical. There is no institution, or generally there is no institution who is able to settle this kind of conflict. Of course, the consequences is the resort to violence, erosion of the social fabric, of course, tendencies to enroll, because if you don't, like young people who doesn't have land to cultivate, what do? They can enroll, or they go to digging in some, in the mining sector, in some informal gold mines, or they enroll in militia. Of course, all this fuel social paranoia, no? The perception to be victim, and of course of the other group, and ethnic violence. There is also a problem, of course, of food scarcity and malnutrition. Since the land is not enough, sometimes you have less than 1 hectare per family in the Masisi, for example, and that's not enough to guarantee food for you and your family. And there is also changes in farming strategies, because see, if you are not sure that that land is your land, for example, you are not going to cultivate coffee, because coffee, for example, needs time. So maybe you cultivate sweet potato or beans or manioc, etc. So cash crops has diminished, like cash crops such as banana or such as coffee has diminished. Just because of this situation, because maybe you prefer to, if you are not sure that you have the right on that land, you prefer to cultivate beans and or something else, but in 1 year you can harvest, and that's on. And then, of course, this also another implication, the changes in food habits. So, conclusion, I don't have so much to say. The conclusion, of course, we need a land reform. The Congolese government is working on land reform, but it's a long and difficult process. It's very long and difficult processes. You can understand also because we have different land problem in all Congo. We were just speaking about the Kivu, which, of course, in this region the land conflict is particularly violent, but in other regions the land conflicts are different, is there, but in different way, etc., etc. So the land reform is a very, very difficult project to reform the land, but no, that my conclusion is just, the more I try to understand, the more I try to study the land problem in Congo, the less I understand, because as I try to show, it's very much complicated. And what I know, and I'm sure that the land conflicts still fuel, still foster other level of the conflicts at the local level. Okay, thank you very much. I hope I was not so long. Thank you.